Tangled in Tuscany. Chapter 23. One Last Harvest. The vineyard moved on as it always did. Mattia was marking the ripest sections with colored ties, moving down the rows with a steady rhythm. Chiara double-checked fermentation tank capacities, making sharp notations in her worn leather-bound logbook. Leo had the old tractor sputtering to life again, its engine coughing like a reluctant old man, being forced to wake up from a deep, unbothered nap. The harvest waited for no one. But for Luca, everything moved through a filter. The wind felt heavier, less playful. The olives on the slope seemed too still, suspended in a quiet that felt unnatural. Even the cicadas, those relentless, droning companions of every Tuscan summer, sounded like they had lost interest. Their hum had dropped to a lower, more mournful frequency, like a song that no longer had a beat to follow. In his room, Luca carried the photograph with him, propped it against bookshelves, set it near the edge of his desk, held it too long in his hands. He didn't look at himself in the picture anymore. He looked at her. Or rather, how she had seen him. The angle of the frame, the lighting, none of it was accidental. It was her eye, her timing, her patience. She'd captured him in a rare moment, unguarded, laughing, unaware of the lens. And it gutted him, the way she had made him visible without asking permission. The way she had pulled something open in him that now refused to close. But outside, he showed nothing. He smiled when necessary, nodded at instructions, responded to questions. He joked with Leo once. Something about the brakes on the tractor, still sounding like a goat giving birth. And got a round of laughter from the courtyard. He even laughed too. But it didn't reach his eyes. Not even close. He avoided the fig tree. He couldn't walk by it without hearing the echo of her voice under its branches, or imagining her there again, arms crossed, teasing him gently in that way she had. The guest house sat undisturbed, the curtains drawn. He hadn't stepped inside since the morning he found the photo on the windowsill. Even the cellar, once his quiet sanctuary, now felt hollow. Its damp stone walls and cool barrels no longer offered comfort, only reminders of her presence. Of the way she had once lit a candle down there, just because the shadows made her camera curious. And in those quiet spaces between tasks, he couldn't stop the memories. The way she hummed when setting up a shot, off-key, a little nasal, always the same soft string of notes. The faint scent of bergamot that clung to her skin. The way she'd set her tea on the windowsill, always on the left side, even if the right was closer. Small, insignificant things. Except they weren't. They were the things that made her real to him. The things that lingered when everything else had gone silent. One afternoon, needing to retrieve last year's blending notes, Luca stepped into the old blending room, one of the few places untouched since her departure. It smelled like cork dust and lemon oil. He knelt to pull a binder from the lower shelf, and as he opened it, a sheet fluttered free. Her handwriting, loose, looping, confident. Sketches, timelines, scene notes. A sequence of stills, each one dated and coded. She had been mapping something important. He stared at it for a long moment, then folded it and tucked it back without reading further. He wasn't ready. That evening, he stood alone on the terrace, a glass of unfinished Sangiovese in his hand, watching the hills turn to gold beneath the setting sun. The vines shimmered as the light poured through them, casting long shadows that danced between the rows. A breeze moved gently through the olive trees, their leaves catching silver as they swayed. It should have felt like a gift, it always had before. But now, it only felt like absence, a quiet too loud to ignore, a stillness shaped exactly like her. The next morning, the vineyard shifted into motion before the sun had fully risen. The harvest had officially begun. There was a hum to the air, part anticipation, part adrenaline, as the crew gathered near the tool shed. Crates were stacked in tidy rows, gloves laid out in bundles. The scent of freshly turned soil mingled with that of ripe grapes and early dew. Birds shrieked from the treetops, stirred by the sound of boots crunching on gravel. Chiara moved with precision, organizing the pairings and routes like a general on campaign. She handed Matteo a clipboard and called out his row assignments, her voice quick and clipped, but not unkind. Matteo shouted back a response in mock protest, and Leo, already seated on the tractor, responded with a whistle and a crude joke that made half the team laugh, and the other half roll their eyes. It was familiar, almost festive, but not for Luca. He stood on the edge of it all, giving instructions with the same authority he always had. Direct, efficient, clear. But the edge was missing from his voice. The warmth that once crept in when explaining fermentation schedules or trellising ratios never arrived. He moved through the tasks like someone underwater, pressing forward, but muffled, slow. When the last light of day faded and the workers packed up their gloves and baskets, he didn't follow. Instead, he stayed behind, ducking into the fermentation room, the blending lab, the bottling corridor, anywhere with walls and purpose. He checked the seals on the tanks twice, reset the dials on the press even though Matteo had done it already, adjusted the cooling system vents. Though the temperature held steady, the machines around him hummed their low, predictable music, stainless steel and humming motors, cold and mechanical. But even the hum felt too loud. At some point, as the last of twilight faded to ink, Luca looked up and saw the moon through the glass ceiling, pale and full, rising slow above the vineyard's crown. Its light poured through the glass and bathed the room in soft silver. Everything glowed, metal, gauges, even the dust floating in the air. And in the corner of a high window, his reflection stared back at him. Still, empty. He didn't look like the man in her photograph. Not the laughing figure with sunlight caught in his hair. Not the one caught mid-motion, mid-breath. Not the one she'd said looked like he was finally breathing. Now, all he could see was a man keeping himself busy, so he wouldn't have to think. But thinking found him anyway. A soft creak behind him pulled him from the spiral. He turned. Chiara. She stepped into the room quietly, holding a covered plate wrapped in a striped cloth. "Did you eat?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He shook his head. Without asking, she placed the plate on the metal table beside him and gave his arm a gentle squeeze. Then she said it. Simple, but devastating. "Why in so much pain, Luca? She may be only one call away." He blinked, caught off guard. Chiara didn't flinch. She may be waiting for that. And then, just like that, she turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving him with the weight of her words and the silence that followed. He stared at the plate but didn't touch it. Instead, he sank into the chair beside it, elbows on his knees, shoulders slack. The hum of the equipment continued. The moonlight shifted slightly. But Luca stayed frozen in that moment, staring into the quiet, trying to make sense of something that refused to be sorted into logic. He still didn't know if it had been the right thing to let her go. The sky stayed clear through mid-morning, and the harvest moved into its rhythm. The vineyard pulsed with life, grape clusters snapping from their stems, baskets filling with deep purple fruit, boots crunching through the dust between rows. The hum of work, punctuated by laughter and playful insults, made the slope feel like something ancient and alive. Luca worked alongside them at first. He conferred with Chiara near the main slope, nodding at her rundown of the crate rotation and processing timelines. But even as she spoke, his eyes kept drifting. To the slope where Sophia had once crouched with her camera, to the fig tree she'd always gravitated toward, when the sun hit just right. He excused himself and turned toward the bottling room, under the pretense of needing to double-check the output projections. The truth sat heavier than steel in his chest. Inside, the cool air slapped his skin, the sudden drop in temperature making his breath catch. It was silent, save for the distant drone of the harvest crew outside. He flipped open the logbook and stared at the numbers without really reading them. He didn't hear the door until it clicked shut. "You need something?" he asked, not looking up. "Yeah," Alessia's voice came from behind him. Calm, clear. "I need you to focus on the harvest." He stilled, pen caught mid-stroke. "I'm working," he muttered. "No, Luca, you're hiding." He turned. Slowly. Her eyes met his without flinching. "What do you want me to say?" he snapped. "That I miss her." That I think about her every second. That I can't sleep in my own bed because it still smells like rosemary and her shampoo. Something flickered in Alessia's face. Sympathy, maybe. But it vanished quickly. Then why didn't you stop her? The question hit harder than he expected. He flinched. His throat worked to form something that wasn't just guilt. She made a choice, he said, quieter now. So did you. Alessia replied, firm. You let her walk away, thinking she was just passing through. You never said she belonged here. Never made room for her in this future you supposedly care so much about. He looked away, jaw tightening. She left because she thought she had to, she continued. But I saw you. Around her. You were different. Lighter, like something had come undone in a good way. And she saw you, Luca. She chose you. But she wasn't going to beg for you to choose her back. I didn't know how, he began, but Alessia cut him off. You did. You were just afraid. And I get it. I watched Papa do the same thing with time. Waiting until it ran out before he said the things that mattered. She stepped toward him, eyes fierce now. You don't get to do that. Not again. He swallowed hard, silence thick between them. Then she softened, just slightly. I want to see her here for harvest. This season is hers too. You know it. Luca didn't answer. Alessia reached for the doorknob but paused. The decision is yours. She left, the door clicking shut behind her. Luca stood in the stillness, pulse thudding. The room was suddenly too loud with nothing in it. He didn't return to the vineyard. Instead, he descended the stone steps to the cellar, where light filtered through the slatted windows in dusty beams. The barrels lined the walls like sleeping giants, cool and still. But the quiet here wasn't comforting. It pressed in, echoing with the sound of things unsaid. He wandered toward the small alcove. The far edge of the cellar, where she once tested light through wine glasses, captured dust motes mid-air, scribbled ideas on napkins and scraps of cardboard. A half-finished sketch leaned against the wall, rough charcoal lines shaping the old vineyard gate, and her cardigan, the one she always wore on misty mornings, was draped over the back of the chair. Luca sank into the seat, unable to stand anymore. The ache in his chest, dulled for days by movement and task lists, broke open. Not a sharp stab, but a slow aching unraveling. His hands curled into his thighs, breath stuttering. His shoulders shook once, then again, and he cried. Not loudly. Not the kind of sobbing that racked the body. But the quiet kind. The kind that sat low in the ribs and cracked through the bones. The kind that came when you'd held it in too long. He pulled a crumpled slip of paper from his pocket. The one she'd tucked behind the photograph. This is how I'll remember you. Not the man who runs the vineyard. The one who looks like he's finally breathing. He stared at the words, trembling slightly in his grip. And he hadn't told her what she needed to hear. He hadn't told her anything. He remembered what Chiara had said. She may be only one call away.